Hey, Islanders, and welcome to episode 62 of the Camano Voice. Today, I speak with a retired colonel in the Air Force, as well as an author. Please welcome Colonel Tracey Meck. Hi, I'm Brandon Erickson, and you're listening to the Camano Voice podcast, where I interview folks around Camano Island and beyond. If you want to stay up to date on events, businesses, and even hear a little history of this area, subscribe to this podcast and share with your friends. Thanks for listening. Hey, Islanders, and welcome to another episode of the Camano Voice, where we release a new episode every Tuesday. So I got to speak with Colonel Tracey Meck on today's episode, and she's also an author. So she's a retired colonel from the Air Force, as well as an author. The book she wrote is called... I should know this. See You Along the Way. And it's a book about her journey of walking the Camino de Santiago, which is a pilgrimage that many people take over in, well, it goes through quite a few European countries. But anyways, we get into all of that as well. And but we hear about her time in the Air Force and what she did and how she why she decided to get in the Air Force in the first place. So, anyways, without further ado, here's my conversation with Colonel Tracey Meck. Hey, Islanders, and welcome to another episode of the Camano Voice. Today I'm here with a retired colonel from the Air Force, as well as an author. Welcome to the podcast, Colonel Tracey Meck.
Hello. Glad to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for joining me. So before we get started with everything, tell us a little bit about Tracey.
All right. Well, I was born in Montana and raised in Alaska. And after graduating from high school up there, I was lucky enough to get a nomination from my congressman and then, of course, a appointment to the Air Force Academy. And I graduated from there with my commission in 1987. And then I went into the Air Force as a security police officer, and later that changed to security forces. And did that most of my career until I deployed to Afghanistan as a provincial reconstruction team commander. And after that deployment, I went back and forth between security forces and what we call stability operations, which is what we were doing on the PRT, which is nation building. You know, we were building schools, clinics, water systems, electric systems, helping mentor government officials and that kind of thing. And then after that deployment, I went back and forth at the CENTCOM headquarters level and at the Pentagon, and eventually deployed to Iraq and Djibouti, Africa. And then I retired in 2012, and I bought a nice log home on Camano Island, mainly because a lot of my family had moved down into this area.
Okay.
And not on Camano, but within driving distance.
Yeah.
And so I've been here since 2012, and now I'm kind of a professional volunteer. I mean, I've written the book, but it's hard to sell a book, so that's not a full-time job. What I do is volunteer at the church and with the Air Force Academy.
Okay.
As an admissions liaison officer, so I work with the local high schools.
Nice.
And the students and counselors and their parents on when they're interested in attending the Air Force Academy, and then I help them through the application process.
Nice. Very cool. So you said you started in Montana. How long did you live there? Until about what age?
Well, besides a year and a half where we lived over in Minnesota, I lived there until halfway through my fifth grade year. So
Okay.
1976, we moved to Alaska. So I did junior high and high school there.
Nice.
And then I maintained my Alaska residency all through my military career.
Okay.
One of the saddest days of my life was to give up that Alaska driver's license and my plates on my car and get the Washington one. But, well, here we are.
Yeah.
It was just always kind of neat to be from Alaska, you know.
Yeah. That's very cool. So when you moved to Alaska, was that a big change for you from Montana? They're both kind of outdoorsy, but it's
and
different.
They both get cold. But Alaska's more of a frontier area, even though we were in Anchorage, which is by far the biggest city.
Mm-hmm.
I think at the time it had about 200,000 people. I'm not sure it's that much bigger now.
Yeah.
I haven't checked lately. So it was, but I've always been from a small town, so that wasn't a big issue. But it was more of a frontier type of an atmosphere instead of middle America atmosphere. So it was different, but it was a great lifestyle. And
Yeah.
I always expected to go back there, but things changed, and
Yeah.
and I didn't end up going back there. Now with some of my arthritis and other issues with cold injuries from Afghanistan and stuff, I don't think I could live there with the cold. I
Right.
can go up in the summer,
Yeah.
but my body would not accept the cold
Yeah.
anymore. In fact, now I go to Arizona for 3 months out of the
Okay.
winter. I'm a snowbird.
Yeah. Yeah. What part of Arizona?
Gold Canyon. It's on the east side of Phoenix area. So
Okay.
it goes. What is it? Mesa, Apache Junction, Gold Canyon, the desert.
Okay. Got it. Yeah. We moved up here from Tucson, Arizona when I was about 5 years old. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and then so we made a lot of trips back and forth to Arizona. So very cool. So, so you were in Alaska. What kind of got you interested in military in general?
Well, it started out as more of a desire to be an astronaut. I was only a few years old when I watched the landing on the moon on TV.
Yeah.
And I've always been interested in science fiction, and I wanted to be an astronaut. And of course, watching the challenge or the space shuttle program and everything. So I grew up with all of that. So that was the main reason I went to the academy, because I read the book The Right Stuff.
Yeah.
And kind of occurred to me that the best way to become an astronaut, at least at that time, would be as a military officer, pilot, test pilot, that type of thing.
Okay.
So I went to the academy with that in mind, and didn't do quite so well in physics. I did straight A's, easy A's in high school in physics, and
Yeah.
I got there as a physics major in order to be an astronaut, was my thought. And I was really happy to get a C out of the class. So I started thinking, well, maybe this isn't going to work out quite as well as I had hoped. And at the same time, I was getting A's, easy A's in my law and political science classes.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed it. If I had homework in both, I would tend to do the law and political science homework instead of the physics,
Yeah.
because I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
So eventually I changed my major to political science, or officially it was called international affairs, with a focus on national security.
Okay.
So we really don't need that in space. So and then the other thing that happened was I got a orientation flight on a jet, and I didn't like it so much.
Yeah.
And I decided that I really didn't want to be a jet pilot.
Yeah.
So I switched my major, switched my career aspirations, decided to be security forces, or security police is what it was called at the time. So now what I'm doing is I'm waiting for the moon base to be established, because once it is and it's populated, then I can be the chief of police up there.
There you go.
So I can merge the two things together.
Right. Just reach out to Elon. He's working on that.
Okay, yeah, I should.
Very cool. So, just because within the military, there's a lot of different ranks and different job titles and stuff, and at least for me, I get a little confused with how they all work. So, what's kind of the role of the security police within the military?
Okay, what we do is law enforcement. So we go on patrol on the base, because, believe it or not, it's like a small city on a base, and people speed, people get in domestic disputes.
Okay.
They get in fights at the club. Sometimes there's even shoplifting. So we do have police that do that. Then the other half of the job is security, and so we protect the priority resources.
Okay.
And then another part of it is, especially after 9/11, it became the forefront, is what we call anti-terrorism.
Okay.
So under combating terrorism, there's two sections. The counterterrorism is more of the offensive stuff. The special forces guys going after the terrorists. The anti-terrorism is more defensive.
Okay.
So we build up the defenses of the base.
Okay.
And our goal was always to make our base look the hardest, the most protected, so they'd go bug somebody else. But then part of that would be, convoy security. In the war zone, we did convoy security, base security, and patrolling outside of the area around the bases to make sure that our planes could take off and land without getting, surface-to-air missiles shot at them.
Yeah.
Or if somebody was shooting mortars at the base, we could go out and see if we could find whoever it was that was shooting at us. So, our area responsibility for patrolling was out to the limit of the weapons that were being fired against us.
Okay. Oh, wow.
And then after
Yeah.
that, the Army did the area patrols, but we secured the base itself.
Got it. Okay. So when you were in security police on base in Alaska, right?
No, I was never stationed in Alaska.
Oh,
so that
okay.
was just the last part of my elementary, junior high, and high school years.
Got it. Okay.
I put in for Alaska a lot, but I never got it.
Got it.
I put in for Alaska. They sent me to Texas and Honduras and Florida and all these hot places.
Everywhere else.
Arizona.
Yep. So then, when was it that you started, where you were assigned to actually go overseas with everything else that was going on?
Well, I did a lot of overseas tours, assignments before the deployments. So I
Okay.
was stationed my first place was in Sicily, at Camiso Air Station in Sicily. And then I was at Hahn Air Base in Germany. And then I came back statesides a little bit. And then I was in Turkey at Diyarbakir. It was called Princelik Air Station. And then I had a tour in England and Honduras. I think that covers my assignments.
Okay.
And then I had several deployments from England. We did a refugee support operation. We were supporting the Kosovo refugees that were in Albania during the Kosovo War back in 1999.
Okay.
And then the following year, I was at the headquarters then, so I was actually in Germany, but the operation was happening down in Albania.
Okay.
And then the following year, we picked up and moved the whole headquarters down to South Africa and did a flood relief operation for a 5-country area in southern Africa.
Okay.
And then I had my first deployment to Afghanistan was in 2005, where I was the Deputy Support Group Commander for the Air Force camp at Bagram Air Base. And then the year after that, I went back as the Provincial Reconstruction Team Commander for Gardez, which is south of Kabul. And my PRT had 2 provinces, Paktia and Logar provinces, where we were doing all the reconstruction development and governance capacity building, and a little bit with the security force development in that area.
Okay.
And then after CENTCOM in Florida and the Pentagon, then because I'm such an expert on Afghanistan, they went ahead and sent me to Iraq.
Okay.
But that only lasted about 3 months. And then the State Department was taking over the police development mission there. So they were phasing out my unit that I was assigned to, and I ended up getting forward deployed to Djibouti in the Horn of Africa.
Really?
And
Okay.
I did 6 months down there and then came back and retired from the Pentagon. So I was at the Pentagon for like 4 years, but so much of it was away from it that
Yeah.
it was kind of interesting.
Yeah. Well, we have some missionary friends that were they were missionaries in Djibouti for many years.
Oh, okay.
I think they owned a bookstore there, and yeah, but they were talking about how hot it gets there.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
So, so what was it like being over in Iraq and Afghanistan during that time? By the time you got there, were it still kind of red alert, or was it calmed down a little bit?
Well, the first time, believe it or not, the first time I went to Afghanistan, the violence level was quite low. when I went back a year later, it had totally changed, and there was a lot more IEDs and mortars going off on bases,
Okay.
And so it had increased, not decreased, between,
Wow.
2001, 2 time frame, that was hot. Then things kind of settled down, and things were going okay when I was there in 5, but then they really, really cranked up the violence after that.
Yeah.
So it was still pretty violent while I was there. I did not get into any firefights, and I'm okay with that.
Yep.
I did not earn a Purple Heart, and I'm okay with that. I don't, I got a Bronze Star, but it's not for valor, and I'm okay with that because I was never in a situation where I had to do that.
Yeah.
Or prove myself in that way, and I guess that's okay. But my team did get attacked a couple of times. I just wasn't with them during those missions.
Okay.
I didn't go on every mission with the team. I just went on the ones that the commander needed to be on.
Yeah.
There was a lot of lower level detailed coordination that happened without my personal touch.
Yeah.
As was with those 2
Yeah.
that ended up getting attacked. But we didn't lose anybody. We had some injuries, but we didn't have any deaths. So that was
Good.
That was a blessing.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that I've read there was a book by Jocko Willink, and he was a Navy SEAL, I believe, and he talks about some of his stuff that he did in Iraq, and like during that whole time and so they were on front lines and behind enemy lines and stuff, but just the decisions that you have to make when things are going on, and like whether or not people will survive with these decisions that you're making, and it just the book is called Extreme Leadership. And how you have to own up to every decision that you're making. And he compares that, he relates it to business, and how that as a leader in a business, every decision you make, everything that's going wrong with the business, that's your fault, right? And you've got to own up to that. And so he's comparing it to his military experience. But yeah, that kind of that level of like understanding of knowing like each decision you make is very important because you're talking about lives that are on the line.
Oh, absolutely. And I knew it every day. I sent 1 or more convoys out, and we did 450 convoys total in the 1 year that we were there.
Mm-hmm.
One day there was 6 of them went out, and any one of those could have been hit.
Yeah.
And it. Mm-hmm. So you just have to focus on the mission,
right?
And you can't let yourself think about that, or you're not going to be effective,
right? Yeah.
But everybody knows it could happen.
Yeah. Nice. So then, so while you were over there, and then when you were doing the rebuild and stuff, were you doing like structural rebuild, or was it like political rebuild? What was kind of the infrastructure rebuild stuff you were doing there?
Well, we could only do government type buildings.
Okay.
We couldn't build personal homes and stuff. Mm-hmm. We were there to support and build up the government. So schools, clinics, government buildings for like courthouses, mm-hmm. or offices for the governor, that type of thing. What we could do, though, to help the economy is we were putting in like solar lights in the marketplace,
okay.
so that they could continue the market in the evening because they didn't have electricity.
Yeah.
Or like in Gardez, we installed with the help of USAID a big generator that powered about half of the city for 4 hours a day.
Okay.
But that was about all it could handle.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there was the big problem of the fuel and how that was going to be paid for. And you would not believe all the complicated ins and outs of every project. And
right.
the training for the operators and who was going to maintain it, because we wanted it to be self-sufficient. We didn't want to have to maintain and operate it ourselves.
Right.
So we tried to train them, which worked out okay until that first group decided to go get different jobs or whatever. And
right.
then who trained the replacements, and where did they get the parts to replace
yeah.
it? These things are not so easy. And
right.
you had to really think through them all, and that was quite interesting.
Yeah.
Where were we going with that?
I don't know. But I was asking about like what type of rebuild level you guys were doing.
Right. So. And so we did do some hydroelectric projects. So it was just things that would enable them to have a decent economy.
Mm-hmm.
And for governance capacity building, you need knowledge, but you also need the facilities to work with. Schools, of course, we've built all over the place.
Yeah.
That was one of the biggest things, was the schools, because you're trying to invest in the next generation.
Right. And were you guys, like, did you have a construction team side of the Army, or was the Army the ones doing the construction, or were
No.
you guys? Or?
No, we had some civil engineers on the team,
Okay.
but they were more project development and management people.
Mm-hmm.
We, as part of it, was capacity building, so we would hire Afghan companies.
Okay.
And sometimes they had to have, like, I think it was 80% Afghan employees, but then you allowed some other people to be in there, not U.S. military,
Right.
but people who had the expertise to teach the Afghans what they needed to do, because a
Yeah.
lot of them didn't have the skills.
The background or education.
Right,
or,
so you
yeah.
had to have some experts as part of the company that you hired to make sure that it got done right. Now, what we did was we coordinated with the governor and the local sheriffs, and who usually own the property, and we got the funding,
Mm-hmm.
and then our civil engineers would put out a contract request for bidding,
Yep.
and we'd have 3, 4, 5 companies, bid on it, and then
Yeah.
we would hire them. Then they would do the construction, we would fund it, and then we had a team that went out and did what we called quality assurance
Yes.
checks.
Yeah.
And that was one of the ones that got hit. They had gone out to do a quality assurance check on one of the projects. And of course, that's why I wasn't there. I'm not an engineer, so
Right.
there was no reason for me to go and inspect,
Yeah.
a project, because I couldn't inspect it. I didn't know what I was looking at. But they had been on the site for a while, and the bad guys had seen them go in. And it was one of those places where it's one road in and one road out.
Oh, okay.
And so while they were in there, they planted IEDs on the road to hit them on the way back out.
Wow.
But that's what they were doing. And that's how we tried to make sure that the projects were done to at least a reasonable quality.
Yeah.
What's quality over there, what's quality over here, two totally different
Right.
things.
Right.
But we needed it to be a viable project, because if you fund and promise the citizens a project, whether it's a clinic or a school or whatever, and you
Yeah.
give them a piece of trash,
Right.
then that looks bad not only on the U.S. military who funded it, and U.S. aid, and the U.S.
Yeah.
State Department, because we all work together on these things, but also on the Afghan government. And one of our biggest missions was to connect the Afghan people with their government,
Yeah.
and try and build trust between the two.
Right.
And, if we did bad projects that were falling apart, then
Right.
everybody looked bad, and there was no trust,
Right.
and nobody got any benefit either. So,
Right.
so we had to make sure there was quality, but we did not do the construction itself. But through the construction, all those people that company hired learned those skills.
Yeah.
So now they came out of that project with skills that they could take to other parts of the country and other jobs.
Right. Very cool. Okay, so I want to change gears a little bit, and I want to talk about, you did the trek of Camino de Santiago, but you said, I think in the book, in the summary, something, it said you had attempted it before you actually completed it.
Right.
So how did that all come about? When did you first attempt it, and what kind of had brought you to that, like, wanting to do that?
Okay. Well, it started out early 2013. Believe it or not, my mom asked me if I would go. What was going on was her friend, her name is Ria, wanted to do something special for her 80th birthday. And so she decided that she wanted to hike the Camino. And she asked my mom to go with her. And then my mom asked me. And then I decided, well, I need somebody a little closer to my age, so I asked my niece, which is kind of funny because I'm halfway between my niece and Mom and Ria, but we ended up with the four of us heading over in 2013.
Okay.
And then the bad part was I talked the two older ladies into skipping the middle 200 100 miles because I had some serious problems with my feet, and I was really struggling with them. Now, granted, my niece had already dropped out. She dropped out after the first week. She had some serious tendon issues in her feet. And then I was starting to have foot problems because of the circulation issues from the cold injuries from the war, plus the arthritis in the toes. And so I talked them into skipping. And when we get to the other side of the 200 miles we skipped, the first thing we did was meet a 91-year-old who did the whole 500. So now I'm feeling really guilty because I got this huge ego, an Air Force colonel. And I talked the 72 and 80-year-old into skipping 200 miles. And then we meet a 91-year-old who did the whole thing. In fact, he had slipped in the shower and fell, and they took him to the doctor. And by doing that, he missed one day of the hike. So when he got all the way completed, he took a bus back and redid that one section that he missed. So now I'm feeling really bad. Right? So I decided I had to go back in 2015 and do it right. Now, some people say, well, just go do the 200 you skipped. But no, that's not good enough. I've gone 300. What's the big deal about doing 200? So I have to start all the way back at the beginning and go all the way to the end and do it right. So that's what I did in 2015. Now, I was not able to convince my mom, Rhea, or my niece to go with me. So I did it alone the second time. But you're never really alone because there's so many other people doing it. You form a Camino family, if you will.
Yeah.
As you meet people who go about the same distance, stay in the same type of places at night that you do, and you develop these friendships. And so there's always people around. So you're never really alone.
So where does it start? Like when I was looking it up online, I was seeing like there's all these different paths, or maybe not paths, but there's this network. So where do you typically start and end if you're doing that full walk?
Right. Well, the history of the Camino started with people going on a pilgrimage to Santiago because that's where the Apostle James is encrypted underneath the altar there.
Okay.
After he was martyred in Jerusalem, Rome, I don't remember which. But anyway, his followers brought him back to Santiago because that's where his missionary area was.
Okay.
And they built a cathedral around it. So, 1,000 years ago, people would start in Moscow, Paris, Geneva, anywhere in Europe to walk on foot to Santiago for a pilgrimage because before there were trains and planes, you couldn't go to Jerusalem from Europe. So they would go to Santiago. So that's how it all started, and that's why you've got all these caminos starting in all these different directions and all ending in Santiago. The one that is most popular starts at Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port in southern France.
Okay.
And the first day you go over the Pyrenees into northern Spain, and then from the rest of that time, you go across northern Spain through Pamplona, Logrono, Leon, Astorga, and finally into Santiago.
Okay.
So that's the most popular, and I think it's most popular. Well, I'm sure it was popular beforehand, but the movie The Way with Martin Sheen and Emilio Estevez.
Okay.
That's the route that they took.
Got it.
And that introduced it to America.
Yep.
And before then, I don't know that many people in America did it because they didn't know about it. But once that movie came out, everybody was over there and they all did the same thing they did in the movie.
Yeah.
Start at St. Jean and go to Santiago. Now, in the movie, they kept going past Santiago to the end of the earth on the coast.
Okay.
We did not do that extra 50 mile. We stopped at Santiago and took the bus to the end of the earth. Because it was pouring down rain, and the whole 5 days it would have taken us to do that walk, it was scheduled to be pouring down rain, and we decided...
Not worth it.
No, not worth it.
Yep.
We got to Santiago, we're good.
Yep. So typically, how long does the entire walk take then? That's
if you go
significant.
by the guidebook, which is updated every year by a guy named John Briley out of England. He does the walk twice a year and updates the book once a year. If you go by that, he has it broken down into 33 stages. And a
Okay.
lot of people will follow that. You don't have to. You can. I've found people that were doing it in 45 or 60 days. We found a guy who was doing 40 kilometers a day. And,
Wow.
we started with him in 2013. We met him at the restaurant
Okay.
in St. Jean the night before we started.
Wow.
He interpreted for us at the restaurant because my niece and I were trying to figure out what to order, and the whole thing was in French, and we didn't have a clue. So he helped us out, and then the next day we walked with him. We saw him a lot at the first stop, and then the second day he said, I gotta move on. And the next time we saw him, now remember, we skipped 200 miles. The next time we saw him was the night before we entered Santiago. He was at the hostel we were at the night before. So he did 500 in the time it took us to do 300. So you've got all sorts of people doing it at different paces. Now,
Okay.
in 2013, we followed the stages.
Okay.
The second time, I decided that it didn't matter how long it was going to take me, I was going to finish it. And so I took half days. If my feet were hurting too bad, I would stop.
Yeah.
If I was feeling good, I'd go a little extra. And the other reason I didn't want to go by the stages is with everybody stopping at the stage end,
Yeah.
it's very crowded
Yeah.
in that village or at those hostels. So I was part of the I hate big cities Camino family, and we would stop in villages in between
Okay.
and small little areas, and that was the Camino family that I was able to connect with because they
Yeah.
didn't like big cities
Yeah.
and big crowded hostels either. So
Right. So then along the way, are you kind of staying in a mixture of hostels and then camping as well?
Oh, no, we didn't do any camping.
Okay.
One of my big issues from the military is a bad back. And in order to do camping, you would need a 30, 40, 45-pound pack.
Right.
We, on the Camino, because you stay in hostels and bed and breakfast, hotels, that type of a thing, you can get your pack under 20 pounds.
Okay.
And that made
That's
it
what I was
doable.
wondering, too, yeah.
That made it doable for me.
Yeah.
There's no way I could have done it with a heavier pack. So there's many different types of hostels. Some of them, the municipal hostels, you get to stay with 100 of your closest new friends. But they're cheap. They're €5 a night.
Wow. Nice.
Or you can stay at some where you can get smaller rooms where you might have 10 or 20 people, or I found some with rooms with just 6 people in it. Every once in a while, we treated ourselves to a Casa Rural, which is like a bed and breakfast. So you might have your own room there.
Okay.
Once a week, a hotel, so you could have a shower
Yeah.
with sheets and real pillows and towels for the
Yep.
shower instead of a little chamois
Yep.
camp thing,
Yeah.
Because, you wouldn't go bare bones on what you carry. So
Right.
you don't carry a big shower towel. You
Right.
carry a little camp towel type of a thing.
Yeah. And are you usually carrying, like you're saying, you don't have to carry all of your food that you're going to be eating, but do you carry a little bit as you're going, or for the most part, are there enough stops along the way that you can?
You hit villages every 3 to 4 kilometers for
Oh,
the most
okay.
part. There was a couple of times where there might be 8 to 10 kilometers, so you might buy a snack.
Yeah.
Or you have a sandwich for breakfast and pack half of it and leave the other, or
Yeah.
eat half and pack the other
Right.
half for a stop at lunch. Water was, you just want to make sure you had enough water. And one day I didn't plan well enough for that. But normally you could just take a bottle of water and refill it in every village.
Okay.
And I started doing that because I had a Camelback inside of my backpack,
Yeah.
which I started filling, so 2 liters. But I figured out that I could cut several pounds off of
Yes.
my pack by taking a little, half-liter bottle of water and just refilling it at each village.
Right.
And that's what I ended up doing because I needed to ease the pressure on the back
Yeah.
and the feet, ultimately.
Right.
Heavy packs also hurt the feet.
Very cool. So, upon finishing that, then what kind of prompted you to write the book? Which, for those who don't know, what's the name of your book?
The book is called See You Along the Way. So it's a play on the Camino de Santiago. In English means the Way of St. James.
Mm-hmm.
And so The Way is the name of the movie with Martin Sheen. So See You Along the way being a journey. So the Camino is a journey, but also my life journey, my military journey. So it's all kind of mixed into the phrase, the way. So it's See You Along the Way with the subtitle, Reflections of a Veteran Hiking the Camino de Santiago. And I got the idea to write the book because as I was volunteering at his pantry at Camano Chapel and other places in my hiking group, and people would ask me questions about my military career, they said, you ought to write a book about this. And so I decided that the Camino would be a good structure to write it about. So that would broaden the audience, too. So now you're looking at an audience that might be interested in hiking the Camino, and then somebody who might want to know about the military, modern military careers and the war on terrorism and everything. And I could put it all together in one book. So each chapter in the book is a day on the trail in 2015. And it took me 35 days to do it in 2015, plus the 3 days travel to get there kind of sets it up. So there's 38 chapters in the book. And while I'm hiking, I'm either talking to people about my military career or things I did since the military, or if I'm not talking to anybody, then I'm reflecting chronologically through my career.
Okay.
So I've mixed the two together.
Yeah.
You got to be careful. You go back and forth between the trail, the military career, today,
Yes.
30 years ago.
Yeah.
But the way we transition, people tell me it's easy to keep track.
Yeah. Very cool. And how long did it take you to write the book from when you decided to write it to when it was published?
Well, I initially thought about writing it in 2013 when we were on the trail.
Okay.
But then when we skipped 200 miles, I decided nobody would want to buy a book about failure. So that went on hold for a couple of years. And so I actually went back intending to write the book when I went back in 2015. So I was able to keep notes along the way so that when I got back to write the book, I didn't have to remember everything.
Right,
I had
right.
notes from every day on the trail to help focus me on what to write. And it took about 2 years to actually write. I was surprised. I figured I could write a chapter a day. I experienced it in a day, so you could write it in a day. Well, no, it took more like a week to 2 weeks per chapter.
Yeah.
So it took way longer than I thought. And then I had to get it cleared by the Pentagon. So that took several months. Because, I'm talking about so much military stuff in here.
Right.
It's not that they censor what we put out. They just needed to go through it and make sure there wasn't any classified information.
Right.
That's all they were really looking for.
Yep.
So they had it for almost 3 months and sent me a 1-paragraph letter saying, yep, looks good, go for it. And then the publication process took another 4 or 5 months.
Yeah.
So it was quite a long process.
Yeah. Well, that's quite a journey to write a book. I mean, I've talked with authors, listened to them talk about writing, and it's just such a commitment. I mean, it's dedication. It is so much time and energy by yourself, just putting it into this project. And so, congratulations. That's very cool to have a book. And
the easy part for me, though, is I didn't have to go out and do a bunch of research.
Yeah.
A lot of people that write books, they spend years researching the topic, and then they finally get around to writing it. But this is all from my experience, so no research needed.
Yeah. Very cool. And how is the book done, and how have you been able to, promote it and stuff like that?
Well, I'm finding that selling the book is a lot harder than writing it, believe it or not. Yeah, after all I've told you about how hard it was to write it, there's 1 billion books. I don't know the exact number, but
something like that.
Something like that on Amazon. How does somebody find your book?
Right.
If they're not specifically looking for my name or the name of the book,
Yeah.
even on search results, because I did a search for Camino de Santiago, it was like on page 20 of the search results, So how does people find it?
Right.
The only way I've been able to sell it so far is through book signings, or I do a lot of presentations and then sign the book, or I just mention it to people that I meet and talk them into buying it. So I'm not making any money on it. And matter of fact, I probably have got another $3,000 to make back just to break even, because I had to pay for all the publishing part of
Right.
it. It wasn't like a book company signed me up and took a risk with me. It was, okay, you give us these thousands of dollars and we'll get the book published for you.
Yeah. Yep.
And I'm not broke even yet. So
Okay. Nice. Okay. And then when did you actually finish writing? Like, when was the book published? What year was that?
I think it was I'm going to look. 2018.
Okay.
So it was the end of 2018.
Very cool. All right. And then since the launch of the book and everything, what have you kind of been up to?
Well, I have gone to a lot of like farmers markets and crafts shows, art shows, trying to sell it. I've scheduled presentations. But I just keep going with my volunteer stuff. His pantry at Camano Chapel, the admissions liaison officer for the Air Force Academy. That was before the book. The 3 years before the book, I worked as a service officer at the American Legion in Stanwood, helping veterans apply for the disability and other VA benefits. I actually stopped that so I'd have time to write the book. There were other reasons to stop it, and if you buy the book, you can find out why. But and right now, I'm spending some time working with the U.S. Census and going door to door around Camano Island. So some people are probably not too happy with me right now. Others are very happy to see me. It's kind of been a mixed boat there. And I just got hired another temporary intermittent job, they call it, to give the ASVAB testing at the high schools in the area. So that's the aptitude tests that the military sponsors, but people take it whether they want to go in the military or not to find out where their aptitude is and what kind of a career they might want to follow.
Right.
And through that, some of them may end up in the military. But it is for anybody, whether they want to go to the military or not, to figure out where their talents and desires lie and what kind of career then they might want to start thinking about. So I'm going to start this year giving those tests in the local at the local high school. So now I'll be in the high schools for 2 reasons.
Yep. Very cool.
Can't forget that. Every Wednesday I hike.
Okay.
So I'm in a hiking group called the Skagit Audubon Hikers, and even though we're connected with the Audubon people, we don't do any bird watching. We just hike. Though if we see an eagle, we usually stop and take a picture.
Yes.
But that's not our purpose. But anyway, I've earned my 3,000-mile patch with that group.
Nice.
And my mom has got her 4,000-mile patch.
Wow.
So I don't think I'll ever catch up with her.
Wow. Very cool.
But we do that every Wednesday.
Nice.
So I keep pretty busy.
Yeah. Very cool. All right. Well, I like to end every podcast with some rapid fire questions. The first one is, do you have a lesser known or favorite location on Camano Island that you like to hang out?
I just like to walk. I wouldn't say the lesser known, but I like to take my dog and go on all the trails that we have here.
Yeah.
You know, whether it's Kama Beach, Camano Island State Park. I start on Ivy Road in Dry Lake and go down to Cranberry Lake and over to Kama Beach. Bonham Point is a new trail that I love. Yesterday, my mom and I were out on the Elger Bay Trail over by the elementary school there, and we did the Ridgeline hike off of Cantu Road. So I guess that's one of the things I like to do here on the island is just hiking. I guess it's not little known, but that's what I like to do.
Yeah. Nice. Pretend you have a friend coming from out of town. What would their first day look like here?
I'd probably take them on a hike here or hang out at my house. Like I said, I've got a log cabin, a really neat backyard with an outdoor kitchen type thing, and it's a great place to hang out. And then after I know what level they're at on hiking, we might go up, especially if it's in the summer, into the Cascades.
Yeah.
Do some hiking around Mount Baker or out Highway 20.
Yep.
Oh, Mountain Loop Highway has some great hikes on it,
Yeah.
too.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite hike up Highway 20 that you like to go?
I get them mixed up where they are. I think most of my favorite hikes are actually off of the Mount Baker Highway.
Okay.
So it would be, I'm trying. Skyline Divide.
Okay.
Excelsior. Well, Chain Lakes is beautiful. I've got a beautiful picture from that. Though my feet are getting worse, and that's really rocky. So last year when we did Chain Lakes, it was kind of difficult for me and my feet. So I don't know if I'll do that one again. But Ptarmigan Pass is really cool.
Okay.
And just a few weeks ago, we went to Cascade Pass, and that's always beautiful, beautiful.
Yeah.
That one is out Highway 20.
Okay.
So
nice.
that would be a good one for out Highway
Cool.
20.
All right. Who's an interesting or fascinating person in this community that I should interview next?
I'm going to pick another person from his veterans ministry.
Okay.
Our actual leader, Keith Yoder. He's also retired military. He started out in the Air Force and then switched over to the Army and retired as an E9, the highest rank you can get on the enlisted side. And then he worked at the senior center in Stanwood for many years. He worked out at Warm Beach. Was in charge of the Lights of Christmas for many years.
Yeah. I think that's where I met him.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Yeah. He's just done so much, but one for his country, but also for the community in the Stanwood Camano community. It's just, he's amazing.
Yeah. Very cool.
I haven't told him I was going to tell you that.
That's fine. I know who he is. He gives me a hard time. I can give him a hard time.
Okay, sounds good.
All right. Lastly, if you could have a message on a billboard on Camano Island right as you're driving on the island, what would that say?
Well, something that I put on my signature on my email a lot, kind of automatically goes there, is you're not a failure until you're satisfied with being one.
Yeah.
How about that?
That's good. I like it. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today.
I'm glad you were here, and if you want to buy a copy of my book, it's on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, christianbooks.com, because, we didn't mention it here, but part of the book is also my Christian journey, my testimony, and it kind of weaves through the whole thing. So,
Yeah.
So it is on christianbooks.com, too. So,
Very cool. And I'll put a link to it, to the Amazon in the podcast notes as well, so you can check it out there.
And I'm working with a company right now to build a website. So I have my own website. Right now I don't, but you can just, Google it or go to Amazon and do a search with no problem. Or maybe after this COVID settles down, I'll be able to do another presentation and book signing event in the local area.
Yeah. Very cool. All right. And Islanders, I will talk to you on the next one. Well, a big thank you to Colonel Tracey Meck for joining me on the podcast today, and thank you for listening. If you haven't already, be sure to rate, review, and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast platform. It really helps us be found by other Islanders like yourself. And for more information on this episode, you can go to CamanoCommons.com/EP62. That's CamanoCommons.com/EP62. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.